Last year, I read Kings of the Wyld by Nicholas Eames, and it was an absolute delight, a real highlight of the year. I gave it a 10 out of 10. I gave it a top ranking S rank in my end of the year ranking review, in my end of the year tier list, 𝕚𝕬𝕜, and it was my favorite fantasy book of the entire year, which both explains and brings into question why Bloody Rose, the sequel, has been sitting on my table for months. Does anyone else have that trepidation of reading a sequel? Almost like a bad sequel could taint your enjoyment of the original book? That worry that it just isn't going to live up to how good the first book was? That's what I was doing. Bloody Rose was always I'll read that next book, and never the book I actually got around to until just recently when I finally got around to it. And it turns out I was an idiot the whole time because Bloody Rose is, well, bloody amazing. Set in the same world as Nicholas Eames' Kings of the Wyld, this is a world where mercenary bands are treated like rock stars. The analogy is very clear. The bands tour the different cities, and in these cities they play in stadium shows where they fight in arenas, fighting monsters that have been captured and presented for the enjoyment of the crowd. In days long past, the bands used to venture out into the wilderness, into the Wyld, used to defend towns from roaming monsters, used to go defeat monsters that were taking children, taking livestock, doing damage to the surrounding area. However, the success of the band, the gusto with which they hunted these monsters, has basically driven the monsters away from the towns, from the cities, from the villages, to the point where nowadays you have to roam fairly far to find these monsters, to find a contract to go kill a monster. And when you do, it's normally quite dangerous. So why wouldn't you just play the arena shows? Why wouldn't you just go fight monsters that have been captured, have a bit of a fight in the arena, and then go drinking and whoring and whatever else is you want to do? However, in the far north, there was another horde of monsters being put together by a giant. A horde of monsters that might threaten the very world, all the towns, villages, and cities in its path. Every band worth its salt is beginning to gear up, band together, join up, and go face this horde for a pitched battle. All the bands, that is, except for the band of Bloody Rose, the daughter of perhaps the most famous mercenary of all time, Golden Gabe, one of the characters from our original book. Bloody Rose's band is heading somewhere else, the opposite direction, is heading to do some sort of mysterious contract that no one seems to know anything about. And tagging along is our main character, our protagonist, 𝕚𝕚𝕚, a young woman working as a barmaid in a tavern. She is the daughter of two famous adventurers. Her mother has passed away. Her father has disallowed her from doing anything related to mercenary life. She isn't allowed to play music. She isn't allowed to train with a sword. She isn't allowed to train with a bow. She isn't allowed to talk to mercenaries as much as possible. And yet she dreams of one day becoming one. And we follow her exploits as she becomes the bard of Bloody Rose's band as they travel to take on this contract. The world Nicholas Eames has made for these two books is perhaps my favorite fantasy world I've read so far. It's so jovially dark. The world is full of monsters and it's terrible and scary and people die. But also people are taking it not lightly, but people are making the most of it. People are doing what they can. And for the most part, we follow characters that are hilarious. And this book is full of things that are equally hilarious and dark. And at no point is there whiplash between the two, which is just such fantastic writing from Nicholas Eames. The world building here expands upon the stuff we learned in Kings of the Wyld. You could probably read Bloody Rose without reading Kings of the Wyld, but I don't think you should. For one, Kings of the Wyld is amazing, and you'd be doing yourself a disservice not reading it. And two, stuff in this book does build upon the things we learned in Kings of the Wyld. And this book will spoil some stuff from Kings of the Wyld for you as well. As I was saying, this builds upon the world we got introduced to in Kings of the Wyld. We visit more cities. We see sort of a bit more of the political system at play. And especially at some points, we really do get to experience the political machinations and some of these factions. That's really fascinating. I really, really enjoyed. And I love the widespread amount of monsters. There's so many different creatures and monsters and different ways of fighting. These books really feel like a Dungeons & Dragons adventure. It feels like a group of players from Dungeons & Dragons with their weird, varied characters, all with their different personalities, heading out into the world and facing whatever it is the DM had planned for them that day. And it just works so, so well. And it's just so much fun. In Kings of the Wyld, we really followed the basically just retired rock stars of their day as they kind of tried to live their lives for this stardom that they were living in. In Bloody Rose, we really follow the next groups, the next big groups that are trying to live up to these expectations, these heights, this stardom, this glory that the Forerunners came from. The Forerunners made this world. They made this culture that surrounded them. And now the new people are coming in having to find their own place in this world. And it feels very genuine. And I think it's super relatable because everyone has always had that person they look up to that they want to emulate, but they also want to do their own thing. They don't want to just go the path that they pave, but they also do, It's complicated. And this book has those complicated feelings in it. And we also see how the world has changed thanks to these legendary heroes. The world is safer now. The world is very different. Things are done differently. A whole industry has been built around these mercenary bands. Gone are the days when a mercenary band would roll into town, check up the billboard, grab a job to go kill a hippogriff and go kill a hippogriff. Now they all have bookers and they have people that capture the monsters for them and take them to the cities. They buy monsters at the monster markets before the arenas for them to face in combat, with odds almost inevitably stacked in the mercenary band's favor, be it by their knowledge or not. We have groupies, we have hangers-on, we have fans that surround the bands. What we see here is a far cry from cowering villagers begging for mercenaries to come help them survive, and instead we see villagers screaming and throwing flowers when they arrive because they're so excited to go see the show. And it's just a very different world to the one that the original heroes grew up in. In some ways, it's a story about meeting your heroes, about realizing that these larger-than-life figures that you've had in your mind your whole life are real people, real living, breathing characters, realizing that the world they inhabit isn't what you thought it was, realizing that their life has difficulties and struggles that you didn't know existed. It's definitely a story about found family. It's definitely a story about finding your place in the world and finding your place amongst your peers and accepting yourself for who you are. But the highlight of the book has to be the characters. The character work here is fantastic, just like in the first book. Look, ℓ𝕚𝕟𝕚, Gabriel, Moog, Clay, Matrick from the first book are perhaps my favorite character grouping that I've ever read. And look, gun to my head, I would have to pick them over the characters in this book, but it's by like 1%, and only if you put a gun to my head, which was very rude. The band we follow, Bloody Rose's band, is full, again, just like in Kings of the Wild, is full of different characters, all of whom have their own voice, their own agendas, their own ambitions and flaws that they act towards at all times. We have Brune, the shaman, who can shapeshift into a bear, albeit not very well, who struggles with his own identity, who is ferocious in battle, but caring, lovable, and affable outside of it. We have a Druin, who is a race that we were introduced to in the first book. This is a race that once ruled this world and held humans as slaves, but after a civil war and a series of calamities, are now almost extinct. There are very few of them left in the world. This Druin, known as Freecloud, is part of Bloody Rose's band because he's in love with her and she's in love with him. And their love story is integral and is a very important part of the book and is done remarkably well. Following Freecloud's drive to protect the love of his life, following the suspicion he receives as being a member of the Druin, he is this sort of almost detached character who sees things in a very different way than our human characters and is just a real highlight. We also have the group summoner, Cura. She's covered in tattoos of deadly monsters which she can summon into battle, and she is cold, standoffish, crude. She's I want to say like womanizer, but she's like bisexual, so she's a personizer. I don't know the correct term there. But yeah, she has many different partners that she sees, and she's clearly dealing with some inner turmoil, some inner trauma that needs to be dealt with. And we have our main character who we follow, Tam Hashford. As I said, she's the daughter of some famous mercenaries. She's wanted to live this life for as long as she can remember. And now that she's had the chance, she's learning that it's maybe not all that she thought it was going to be, and things don't quite go the way she was expecting. And we, of course, have the titular character, the head of this band, Bloody Rose herself, growing up as the daughter of Golden Gabriel, the most famous rock star / mercenary of his time. She has a chip on her shoulder about it. She needs to outdo her father. She always has. And the events of Kings of the Wild, where for all purposes she kind of plays the damsel in distress in all the bard songs that get told about that story, has really affected her deeply. She's driven to find glory and fame above and beyond her father's, without relying on her father's name, without relying on her connections. She needs to find her own path in the world, and it has caused some real dilemmas that she has to deal with. And the book explores how she does that. The dialogue in this book is fantastic. At no point did the dialogue come off as clunky or unrealistic. These characters, the way they interact with each other feels so real, feels like this found family unit of close friends. The way they banter with each other but support each other, the way they love each other but get annoyed by each other as they grate on each other as they spend so much time together is just so realistic and fantastic that it just jumps off the page. And just like in the first book, Nicholas Eames pulls off a trick here that he did in the first book where you get to like this point and you're like, how is there so much book left? We're about to finish the story. And then a few pages later, you're like, oh my God, no, we're not. What a shocking twist. And then you get again to like, yeah, no, okay, but now we're actually finishing the story. And then no, we're not. And it's just, I don't think I've had the rug pulled like that so many times in one book as I have in a Nicholas Eames book. And the pacing is fantastic. It is a real page turner. I think the pacing might be a little bit better in this one than it was in Kings of the Wyld. There is action quite a lot of the time. When there isn't, the dialogue is so engrossing that I just needed to keep reading one more page. Again, like in Kings of the Wyld, Nicholas Eames has written a book where on one page I will be literally laughing out loud at 1 a.m., almost waking my wife up because something so funny happened. And then 4 or 5 pages later, choking back tears because something so sad has happened. And at no point did the whiplash throw me out of the book. It's just full of super high highs emotionally and super low lows emotionally that just flow into each other so perfectly and just tell such a damn good story. Following Bloody Rose and her band through this story was an absolute delight for me. It is a highlight of the year so far. It's a book full of heartbreak and hilarity, jokes that really landed for me, as well as emotional beats that stabbed me in the heart, characters I adored, action I found thrilling, suspense, twists and turns. By this point in the video, it's probably no surprise that Bloody Rose by Nicholas Eames is getting a 10 out of 10 for me. I think, without question, Nicholas Eames is my favorite fantasy author I've read so far, and I cannot wait. I'm absolutely salivating to get my hands on book 3 of this series when it comes out, and I am going to pre-order it the second I can. This book is doubly exciting because it is my final bingo book. Bring up the bingo board. This is our Fantasies 2024 bingo board. You don't have very long to finish it if you're still going. It needs to be finished by the end of March, but it is a set of 25 writing prompts with the idea of reading new books, some of which might be outside of your wheelhouse. These are the books I've done so far. As you can see, there's 1 square left, the Bard square. The hard mode for this is the character has to be titled and known as a bard. Tam Hashford in this book fills the role of Bloody Rose's bard. She's called a bard. That is her title. I'm locking it in, and that is 2024's bingo competition. Every square done hard mode. Every square has a review. You can find them in this playlist here, 𝕚𝕬𝕜, and it is done. And this was so much fun trying to find books for this series. We had some highs, we had some lows, but next week I will go over all of them in a video where I will rank every single one of these books. If you want to get a head start on that, as I said, in the playlist you will find reviews for every single one of these. If you want to pick up a copy of Kings of the Wyld or Bloody Rose for yourself, which if you haven't, I highly recommend, there is a link in the description below to my Amazon affiliate page.